Hello, my name is Reese Sparks, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time for my summarization skills. They're not necessarily the best, so bear with me here. I read Antigone, and basically Antigone is introduced in the beginning of the play. She's speaking with her sister Ismene, and they're speaking about their brother Polynices, and how much Antigone wants to bury him. Antigone has two brothers that fought on either side of a war. This was Polynices and her other brother, Eteocles. And this is an interesting kind of situation here because since both brothers fought on either side of the war, the king of the place that she lives despises Polynices for being on the opposing side of the war and praises Eteocles for fighting for him. And as a result, Polynices is not given a proper burial because Creon, the king, is very, very, very mad at him and gives Eteocles a proper burial. But since, they're both Antigone's brothers, she wants the same fate for the both of them because they're her brothers. She cares about them. So she tries to devise a plan to bury Polynices. Now the problem with this is Creon had come up with a rule that said that anyone who tries to bury Polynices would be sentenced to death by stoning. Of course, this doesn't change Antigone's thoughts about the subject, and she tries to continue on and save her brother's rotting body. So she takes action, and at first she hides Polynices' body. She sneaks past the guards that are supposed to be watching him and hides him. And the guard watching doesn't see her do this, and he ends up turning around at some point and realizing that Polynices' body is gone. So he reports this news to Creon, who ended up threatening the guard's life and said that if he didn't find who did it, then the guard would take their place in death. Creon even went so far saying that the guard took bribes, in return for Polynices' body. So Creon was mad, and Creon sent the guard out to go try to find who did this. And the guard returned to his post and ended up seeing Antigone burying her brother, Polynices, or attempting to bury her brother. So the guard sees this and grabs her by the arm and brings her to Creon. This is an interesting part because this is where Creon kind of faces a moral dilemma, because Antigone is his niece, and the guard he had made a promise to, saying like basically if he found who did it, then he would be set free. Antigone ended up confessing to this crime, so Creon ended up setting the guard free and sentencing Antigone to death because Creon's feelings about this situation are very, very drastic. Let's say that. So Creon sentenced Antigone not to be stoned, but to be buried alive, which I can imagine is terrible. So Creon ended up sending her off to the holding cell, I guess is what you'd call it. And in that time, Antigone's fiance, Haman, came up to Creon, who is actually Haman's father. So Antigone's fiance is Haman, or is the king's son. And he brought up an intriguing argument, stating that the townsfolk are starting to announce that it's noble of Antigone to bury her brother even under the circumstances that were given. And they said that she should not be, sentenced to death. And after some more, chitter chatter, Creon ended up kind of understanding and freeing her of her sentencing. So obviously Haman was happy, and he went to go try to find Antigone. But Antigone did not hear of this engagement. So she did not want to be buried alive. And she ended up taking her own life by hanging herself. And when Haman got there, he saw his fiancée dead. And he got filled with so much rage that he wanted to go and get revenge against his father, who created this whole mess. So Haman grabs a blade and goes and tries to kill his father. He ends up failing, and when Haman fails, he ended up turning the blade on himself and killing himself. Obviously, this was a crazy situation, so there were people, running around, explaining the situations, and there was a messenger that was running around, and Haman's mother, the queen, overheard what this messenger was shouting, and she wasn't in the palace whenever all of this stuff was happening. Haman's mother's name is Eurydice, I think. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I knew what his mother's name was. But anyways, his mother hears the news of his only son and how he's dead, and how Antigone's dead, and how it's basically Creon's fault. So she ends up cursing. She ends up getting so upset that she ends up taking her own life too. And she ended up cursing Creon, which was supposed to be, this intriguing moment, I guess. But anyways, I thought that it was kind of interesting that with the whole Creon sentencing his niece to death, this kind of moral dilemma that we see a lot in these tragedies. I don't really see how anyone could do that. And I know that a lot of these are supposed, they're supposed to be relatable in a way, and a lot of them are. And even in Antigone, I can see relatability too. But I thought it was so interesting because whenever I was reading, it was almost easy for Creon to just be you know what, you defied my rules, you wanted to do this against my will, so you're gonna accept the fate that I had basically bestowed upon you. And he just threw her in a holding cell and was just ready to bury her alive. I thought that was crazy and interesting at the same time, because nowadays I could never imagine doing that to any of my family members or anything. So it's just crazy how times have changed, really. And then on my reactions to this tragedy, they're kind of mixed. I have mixed opinions about this tragedy. I enjoyed it. It was a fun, and I don't know, it was more like an emotional roller coaster of sorts. Excuse me. I don't know. There was a lot of death, and it was kind of weird to read, but I can see how there's a lot of messages in this play, and I believe that really anyone can, relate to it, like a lot of the other books that we have read in the past, and I think that's really important, and I believe that we can all learn from it. Obviously, we probably haven't experienced the same fates that a lot of these people have, but I still think that you can relate it to some form of action that you've done or experience that you've faced, and I think it's really cool. So I definitely enjoyed it a lot, and yeah, thank you for listening. I appreciate it.